Hey guys, Colleen here, and I'm gonna bring you a little history lesson on a cool amp that I have in the shop right now. I'm gonna call it the Amp of the Month. Before I get into it, I know some of y'all have songs that you have written and recorded and are just waiting to release. And DistroKid helps you upload your music to all streaming platforms, and you get to keep 100% of the royalties. My viewers get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/Fazio. I'll put the link in the description. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you guys to this beautiful Selmer Zodiac Twin 50. So, Selmer was founded in 1885 by a man named Henry Selmer, and he resided in Paris, France. So, Selmer was a French company, and Henry was a clarinet player. During that year, roughly 1885, he was manufacturing clarinet reeds and mouthpieces. And then at the turn of the century, it turned into manufacturing clarinets themselves, other woodwind instruments, brass instruments, etc. And then in the year 1928, there was a branch founded in the UK by two brothers. Their names were Ben and Lou Davis. And at that point, the UK branch pretty much just focused on distribution and importing Selmer products, so they weren't really doing much manufacturing at that time. And then about 7 years later, in 1935, Selmer in the UK started to manufacture sound systems, PA systems, things of that nature. And then eventually that turned into organ manufacturing, and then Selmer began to build guitar and bass amplifiers. The other popular amps in that time period in the UK were Vox and then later Marshall, but the Beatles' endorsement of Vox really put Vox over the edge, and it was difficult for other brands such as Selmer to keep up. But between the years 1964 and 1966, Selmer came out with the crocodile skin amplifiers. And this particular amp, the Twin 50, seems like it was probably an echo of the Vox AC30. They were trying to put their own thing out there. Selmer amps were uniquely their own circuit. They weren't a copy of Vox amps. They weren't a copy of anything. They were their own thing. And the crocodile skin covering was inspired by shoes and accessories at that time used faux croc skin finishes. So they were trying to be chic and edgy and put something new out there on the market. So despite Selmer's attempts to try and compete with Vox, especially doing something so different with the crocodile skin covering, despite the amp's exotic good looks and the cool gothic Selmer logo, it just didn't pan out. And as writer Mark Brend wrote, why would Music of the Youthful Rebellion want an amp with the same logo that's on their father's trombone case? All right, so let's get into the guts a little bit. So we have the preamp circuit up here, basically all the controls, and there are some preamp tubes up here, and then we have the power supply and output section down here. Everything connects from the preamp via this connector, which plugs into the socket here on the side of the power amp. And we have two 12-inch speakers. This one is a reissue Celestion G12. A lot of these came original with old Celestions, I do believe. All right, so let's talk about these channels. There's two channels. The first channel just has the volume and tone controls. In the first channel, the first gain stage is a 12AX7, and then it passes through the second gain stage of an EF86. The earlier models have an EF86, and the later models use a 12AX7 instead of the EF86 for the second gain stage. This tone control is basically a treble bleed control. And then on the contrary is the second channel, which also goes through a volume and tone control, but then it has these series of EQ selectors, so you can really shape the tone. Basically, there's a network of capacitors that are brought in and out of the circuit depending on which switch you are pushing. And then the second channel also has tremolo. You can see this amp is missing the pilot light. The jewel was broken, so I'm going to be either making or finding an old jewel that will be compatible with this amp and look period correct. So I'm excited to do that. But check out how clicky these switches are. Here's a little sneak peek of the preamp circuit. It does look like somebody has gone in here and added or modified or something to this circuit. There's the housing for the pilot light. And the preamp tubes are on the other side of the board. You can see right there. This is not a preamp tube. This is a seeing eye tube, and it blinks with the tremolo. So cool. After the preamp stage, as I had pointed out earlier, the signal goes into the power amp via this cord. And it goes through the phase inverter, the 2 output tubes, and into the speakers. So that's just a little overview on how this amp works. Now I'll give you guys a little rundown of the repairs I'm going to be doing to this amp. So I'm going to be installing a better power cord. As I had mentioned, I'm going to be installing a new jewel for this pilot light. I'm also going to be insulating this voltage selector a little bit better so nobody gets shocked, because there are exposed wires inside that electrical tape. So somebody had previously restored the preamp, but the power amp is still pretty original, so I'm going to be doing a recap of the power supply. You can see it's pretty much untouched. We have some original filter caps here. I will likely replace some of the output tube control components just to make sure everything is stable. I'm going to be servicing the entire amp, but pretty much everything works actually. I found a little treat inside here, an old bouncy ball. I always love finding cool old stuff in amps. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this little history lesson and overview of this beautiful Selmer amp. Unfortunately, I won't be able to document my repair at the moment. I am just super swamped and trying to get through everything. But I did want to take the time to really show you guys how cool these amps are. So that's about it. I'll see you guys next time.